Hello, 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 all of you beautiful nerds. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing tonight? I am Josh. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a great Monday night. This is one of our first community chats here on the Den of Nerds. The Den of Nerds Live. What these are meant to be is discussions where we will be talking not just with other members of the Den of Nerds, but with you guys. So if you are in the chat right now, if you're watching live and you want to come on to this here live stream and have your voice be heard, do that. I think it's going to be fantastic, man. Politics and pop culture, it's a tricky thing. It is certainly a tricky thing. A lot of opinions out there, one way or the other, and I thought, look, honestly, guys, a lot of this stuff, look, it's serious. Kill the music. A lot of this stuff's serious. Okay, this is serious stuff. And honestly, too, one of the things that I'm most disappointed with these kind of discussions when they happen online is that I think social media interactions, I think text-based discussions are not the best. I really don't think that they allow for the nuance that is required for these sort of things. So I see when people are chatting and they'll say something in text and the other person reads it the worst way possible. The other person reads that the worst way possible back, and then it starts all of these discussions. I think that's a terrible way to have these types of discussions. And so that's where I'm at with it. But, the first person I wanted to bring on to the show, I want to bring on Ken Cologne. Ken Cologne does our social media. He's the meme master. What's going on, Ken? How you doing, brother?
What's up, Josh? I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Excited to talk to you about this politics and pop culture issue. This is something we talk about behind the scenes, like with the Den people, you know what I mean? Often, and I thought it would be a really cool way to sort of bring some of that goodness over into to the political sphere, or to the channel. Now, I have a question for you, sir.
Sure. Hit me.
So you are one of you like Captain Marvel a lot. Yeah. So I put
for that in the chat, but yeah.
Yeah. So I put your girl on the thumbnail. Now, here's the thing. She's a controversial figure. What was your take? And I think it'll be a different take than a lot of other people out there. What is your take when the whole thing went down with Brie Larson herself, when that whole situation with the thing? What was your sort of takeaway from that?
I think, and I will admit to probably a certain degree of bias. I think, oftentimes when any text or video, we perceive it kind of based on our biases. And I'm a pretty big fan of Brie Larson. I like a lot of her work. Like one of her movies, Short Term 12, is one of my favorite films. And also kind of politically, I'm probably more, a good bit further to the left of kind of most of us in the Den, at least.
Yeah.
In some of our group chats. But and so I think that kind of lend me to kind of interpret her comments in a certain way. So for me, it wasn't really that big a deal. Like I got what she was trying to say. Maybe it wasn't as nuanced as we would have liked it to be in order to kind of hit people who didn't already agree with that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, because of where my beliefs already are, it hit my ears a little differently than it did for a lot of other people. But I would agree that maybe it wasn't worded the right way to reach audiences that didn't already agree with the sentiments she was trying to present.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. By the way, guys, just let us know in chat. How many people want to jump on? We can't have everybody in at once, but we can literally put the link to the StreamYard chat into the YouTube chat if that will make it easier for people to get on here. All you need is to have an account with StreamYard. It is a browser service. It's 100% free. Just go to StreamYard.com and let us know in chat. I'll be keeping an eye out there. If you guys would like to come in, we'll just drop it in there. Okay, so going back to the Brie Larson thing, for the longest time, I never actually saw what she even said. You know what I mean? Like, for the longest time. Like, I just heard that she had said something, like, and I'm sorry. Anytime you got to say on stage, I don't hate white men, it's probably, you probably said some stuff that you probably shouldn't have wanted to, or didn't want to say, right? And I think even Brie in her quiet moments probably admits that that wasn't the best way to phrase it. Do you know what I mean? For me personally, when I did go back and watch what she actually said, I was kind of split on it in a couple different ways. Like, number one, I think like politically, I'm probably fine with everything that she said. You know what I mean? But I almost feel, and I think this is really where I think a lot of the crux of the issues are going to start coming from people that are maybe a little bit more conservative. And this is what I'm really interested in trying to hash out, is that
Yeah.
I don't even think it is, it's not the ideologies that people have a problem with. I think it's when I looked at the way that Brie was speaking on stage and the way she was conducting herself and these little interviews and things like that. She was it had very little to do with the the context of what she was saying, or the contents rather of what she was saying. It was totally how she was saying it. Like she just really was kind of snooty, kind of I would just say bitchy, honestly. And it was like a big turnoff. I think for a lot of people, probably in the country and maybe around the world, we don't necessarily want lectured by people in Hollywood anyway. I mean, I think the big rip from conservatives or even moderates most of the time is these people live in Castle Lala Fruit Loops land. You know what I mean? Like, people in Hollywood are very detached from what life is like for a lot of the people in the country. And I think there's this perception of, oh, I don't want to be talked down to people that have valet parking at their Chipotle. You know what I mean? Like, that ain't jiving. So, what do you think about like that side of it? Because again, I think the point I'm trying to make really is it has very little to do with the content of what she's saying. It has more to do with the delivery and sort of this elitism. I think the elitism is something that really bugs people about like Hollywood progressive culture. So what do you think about that?
I think that's a really interesting point. Almost, I don't know if it kind of serves as a counter to this, but it's related. Do you remember the was it Ricky Gervais when he was it the Oscars he was doing or hosting?
Golden Globes, yeah.
Golden Globes, that was it. And his speech, and he was kind of talking about that whole like
Yeah.
Hollywood elitism thing. But and I saw a lot of people, especially on Twitter, like a lot of more people who are probably consider themselves more moderate or conservative, like really agreeing with what he was saying. But I also thought it was interesting that, it's coming from him of all people, where I don't really, it almost came across like almost slightly hypocritical because he's in that as well. I just thought that was interesting. It kind of reminded me of that. But to your kind of wider point about kind of this disconnect, I do feel that, that's there. That's a significant factor, I think. And to bring up your boy and your favorite movie of the past year, Joker.
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix was like, he just had an acceptance speech for, I forget which awards, but he literally said, like, he was making the exact same points that Brie was making, and that he was talking about how actors and creatives of color, especially women of color, are kind of looked over in the Hollywood landscape. And I think, I didn't see the same kind of backlash to that.
Sure.
As it did with kind of the whole Brie Larson situation. So if I could ask you a question.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw those comments or saw his acceptance speech, but why do you think that might be, that there was kind of a different reaction to Joaquin Phoenix saying it versus?
Well, okay, so I'll just be real, right? Like, this is just how I feel. I don't have a quantifiable way to prove this, but I think it actually has a lot less to do with the message, and it has more to do with the messenger. Brie just comes across as a bitch, dude. She just comes across as a snooty bitch. And the truth is, like, look, even Mark, like a lot of the MCU actors, you know what I mean? I'm not on Twitter all the time, but I'm on there and I see what's going on. I see that. Oh man, why am I blanking on Hulk? Mark
Ruffalo.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo. Very left, very far left. Says stuff, about Trumpy, says stuff about, a lot of political situations in the country. Sometimes when I'm scrolling, if I see some of those things, like sometimes it'll catch me off guard, and it's less that I'm like Yeah, it's weird. Like it'll catch me, but I just let it go more. And I frankly think that it just has more to do with like I man, okay, so this is going to kind of I think circle into a couple of different things. But I think personally it has more to do with if they're a reasonable person or not, right? So like I'm sure we could think of people on the left and we could think of people on the right that are just generally more likable or less likable. So I think like when it comes to somebody like a Bernie Sanders, one of the reasons that I think he gets a lot of support from moderates and even Republicans that are more to the middle is just because of like integrity and because of the messaging. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of people might
Mhm.
not agree with his policy, but they might just respect sort of the messaging. And I think maybe even when it comes to something like
Right.
a Chris Evans or like one of my favorite examples of this was with the Shazam movie. Um, Zachary Levi was getting in trouble with the woke police, and I don't remember why. I don't remember why, but he was trying so hard, and his language was so careful, and he's trying to say it in a way that's nice and that's loving, but also like, hey, you're kind of acting crazy and stuff like that, right? And I think there's a lot to be said for that kind of respect, that kind of, hey, man, I don't agree with you, but you know, I'm gonna do more to try to message this in a way that really does not feel like it's an attack. Recently, Andrew Yang, who at this point I think you know, even though I've not publicly ever said it, I wear the Yang hat a lot, and people know I'm a Yang supporter. I really like Andrew Yang quite a bit. He recently was at a rally, and he said, "Let's take a moment and let's give a round of applause for the people that went out and voted for Trump in 2016." And that is a mind blowing thing to do because that is not going to sit well with a lot of people politically. But he's not trying to talk to the extremes. He's trying to talk to the more reasonable people in the middle. Now, he's also caucusing in a state that went to Trump for 10 points, right? So there's a little bit of strategy. He's obviously trying to get those voters. But at the end of the day, it is sort of a respect and sort of a tactfulness in a way to say, hey, I believe this, but also I'm not just going to pretend that everything on that side is bad and that I hate it. And I think some of the attitude that comes from the real extreme right and the real extreme left, it's an attitude thing where it comes across like, hey, man, I'm right. You are really, really wrong. So that's a sort of long winded way to answer it. But I think that that's really what it is. It comes down to the messaging. I don't think Brie was interested. I think Brie was literally interested in upsetting people more than she was interested in getting people that didn't necessarily agree with her to maybe see her point. Do you know what I mean? And that's tough in communication. It doesn't mean the content of what she is saying is wrong, but that's not really what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the way in which she communicates it. So that would be
Mm.
my guess. But how about this? Like, let's see what maybe what you have to say about that, and then let's bring in Al and Ryan and kind of get it a little more
Yeah.
popping.
Dope. 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 So I want to respond to a few things you mentioned.
Yeah.
Now I'm totally blanking. I was like, that's a good point, Josh. I want to come back to that, but
Yeah, no, it's all good.
and then and then it and then it left me. Um, but as far as like why I think that um might be with Brie, oh, this was it. How I don't I mean we don't necessarily agree that she was intentionally trying to piss people off and rile people up. But I do agree with the second part of your statement that it seemed like she wasn't actively trying to convince people that didn't already agree with her. And I think that's kind of where kind of the message kind of gets lost in translation. Like if you're not, I think with just so many things, like you have to consider who your audience is, right, and how they might perceive your comments. And
Yeah.
so I don't think it really extensively thought about like how someone who fundamentally disagrees with what she's saying might perceive it,
Yeah.
or even someone who doesn't fundamentally disagree with it but isn't like all the way there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just think that's something that I think all of us can try to be better about, is like thinking about how someone else might perceive things. Um, although I want to kind of get back to one of your other points, like about like how maybe that she comes off as bitchy. I don't know if I would agree with that 100%. I mean, I do kind of see where you're coming from, but I also think um, like that I myself might even be a little guilty of this sometimes, but like if like we could have both a man and a woman kind of say the same statement,
Yeah.
and based on hundreds of years of based on institutionalized sexism, we could perceive what the woman says in a slightly different way. Now, I'm not saying that explains 100% of the Brie Larson situation. I don't think that. I don't
Yeah.
personally believe that, but I do. I feel like we would be amiss to say that isn't a factor at all.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I don't know. Here's the thing: whenever that issue comes up, it's really hard because it's kind of unquantifiable, right? It's kind
Right.
of, to be fair, I think it's kind of a boogeyman of talking points on the left is these ideas of institutionalized ways of thinking and perceiving. And look, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's like it's so out of left field that it's kind of like that's a whole different discussion, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, how do you sort of work past that? I'm sure we could probably like look at examples and think of examples of people that were male that were very, very abrasive, that people that just really don't like the way that they converse. You know what I mean? I don't know, like maybe like even like a Bill Maher. You know what I mean? You know. Potentially others out there that would be like that. I'm also trying to think right now of like a female that I can think of that's very sort of soft spoken and sort of not necessarily soft spoken, but very careful in the way that they present their ideas. You know what I mean? I'm sure we could find examples of that. Basically, meaning that I think that it's a choice. It's a choice to either not consider it, like she probably didn't, or it's a choice to ignore it and not think that that's important. I think that common ground is so important, and people that aren't looking for it, it's painfully obvious, in my opinion. But yeah, as far as the institutionalized stuff, that's just tough, man. How do we quantify that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's
No, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. It would definitely be to qualify, but I just again I would feel amiss to kind of say that like it not consider it as a factor at all.
Well, here's my thing. I think that when it comes to Brie specifically, it's hard to parse out. It's really hard to separate those two because she's literally talking about like institutionalized sexism and the things that women have to go through and things like that, right? So it's really hard to pull out how much of it is people disagreeing with the message and how much of it is people like actually in practice doing what she's talking about, right? That's tough. Now, I personally have no illusions about institutionalized biases, all sorts of different things that can happen. Like human beings are, still pretty simple in a lot of ways. There's a lot of little biological factors. I think for the most part, like one of the things that this might upset people in the chat, but it's totally true, is that, dude, if you think that women don't have to deal with just one of the things that I feel so bad for them is that they have to deal with guys, just in general. Like, dudes, we're gross. We're kind of gross. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're kind of gross, and we're kind of we have certain things motivating the conversations, motivating things. We're frankly horrible to deal with. You know what I mean? And so I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for women in general having to deal with dudes in that sense. You know what I mean? You go to work, and even at work, you can't like do this and that because you're always being approached a sexualized way and this, that, and the other. I'm sure that that's 100% real. I know because I know guys, and there's things within current political sort of pushes that I think are really good. It's really good to sort of try to shut some of those things down to sort of protect people that want to be protected and to elevate that. But again, and I think that, as much as I can, I want to try to take this back to the pop culture element. This is not really about politics. This is about politics and pop culture, right? So the truth is, what is it about these conversations being brought into our pop culture that is turning so many people off or causing so much anger and discussions? And I think that in a sense it does have to do with messaging. But we got all these people, Ken. Let's bring these guys in to join the convo if that's cool.
Let's do it.
All right, so let's add in Al Shula. What up, bro? Let's add in Ryan H. Ryan's in the building. And then and then we got to add in Tara. What's going on, Tara? How are you?
Oh, yeah.
Can y'all hear me?
Oh, yeah, we got you.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Loud and clear. So I want to jump right to Al right away. You heard Ken and I talking about this kind of stuff, and I just want to continue that. I just want to continue talking. Um, what was your perception of the Brie Larson thing? You kind of heard me and Ken kind of both
Hmm.
giving our talk about it. Like, what do you think, man? Like, was there something that you want to bring up?
Yeah, so I thought it was really interesting what Ken was saying about thinking about sexism or systemic sexism having something to do with it, and I think he's kind of going. I kind of tend to agree with that to a bit, but I think what it really comes down to for me is it's almost that who is the person receiving the message and how did they take it, because that to me is where it really starts to get interesting. Is so Brie Larson comes out and makes this comment, and I mean, I think we can all agree that she was trying to incite in some kind of way, whether it was to rile up the people, the far left, and get them kind of rally to the cause, or to intentionally piss off the right. However you want to look at it, I think we can all agree she was trying to kind of give hit us with a spicy take, right? But it's okay. So now that message comes out. How is that message perceived? How did the left look at it, and then how did the right look at it, and how did they react to it? And so I think when you just and again, not picking on you, Josh, but just kind of your response to it, saying, it came off as kind of that she comes off as kind of bitchy and that she was trying to incite. It's like, okay, well, let's when you look at it that way, I'm like, okay, well, do you agree with her initial message, or is it that your disagreement with her message coupled with the perceived presentation of the message, is that where you kind of jump off the train and go, you know what, she's not interested in having an actual conversation? So I think it really comes down to kind of how people perceive messages, because I know I'm the same way. Somebody can come to me and hit me with some truth, and I will totally disregard the facts that were stated,
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh hell no, I already know you're trying to come at me sideways. So then it automatically turns me off from even wanting to receive the message. So I think that's where, like you said, trying to reach that common ground is a really, really key thing. And then another point was um, how you spot or how do you judge intent, right? Like you had made the comment that you think that she intentionally got up there and said it the way she said it, trying to piss them off. It's like, well, how do we know that was exactly what her MO was at that point? It
Mm.
could, I think it was more of a thing where maybe she just doesn't realize that coming out and trying to be that as assertive as she was in making that statement, she may not realize that it rubbed people the wrong way. I'm sure she does now. I'm sure she's heard plenty of shit about it. But I think it's one of those things where, and I have friends and I do the same thing. It's like, even in my own house, I'll say something and it's totally, totally benign. I don't mean
Yeah.
anything by it, but my wife will take it and she'll run with it and be like, I can't believe you said that way. And I'm like, whoa, 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 that's not even what I was trying to get to.
Uh-oh,
So,
someone's in trouble
yeah,
tonight. Al's
exactly.
letting out the
Oh,
dirty
man.
laundry. Oh,
Look, I stay in trouble. Okay. I got a hot ass mouth. So I'm always getting into it.
yeah.
But the last thing I want to touch on really quick before we transition is just, dude, you are spot on when you say that women have to put up with guys and their shit constantly, because it happens, and it even happened to me today. It's so funny. Like we were literally having this thing in our a luncheon at work, and I'm on an elevator with like 8 to 10 other females.
Yeah.
And so they forget that I'm on the elevator, and there's a chick holding two little mini bunk cakes, and she does this thing where she puts them as a joke with her girlfriends up to her chest, not realizing I'm behind her. And so I laugh at the joke, and they immediately look at me like I'm a dirty perv. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. Like, you just made a joke. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not that dude.
Yeah.
But again, I had to go to her and say, look, that was probably weird, and I apologize for it being that way. She was totally cool about it. But again, it's kind of 9 out of 10 guys probably would have taken that and made some kind of weird joke with it. And so it's like with women, I can totally see a scenario where they get so fed up with putting up with our shit that when they come out and they have that voice and they have that ability to finally kind of speak their mind and say what they have to say,
Yeah.
they do come out kind of riled up and ready to take you on with it. So I think a lot of that kind of plays into this stuff. And then the last thing is, I think too, you have to remember, this is all coming from kind of an entertainment thing. She's got PR people. There are people who are kind of coaching her on what she's saying. She probably did go left a little bit and make people kind of go, whoa, 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 maybe that was a little too hard. But I think some of this stuff really is, and we have to remember kind of when we're dissecting this stuff, that some of this stuff is meant to do exactly what it does, which is
Mm.
incite people
Yeah.
and drive this kind of controversy, because controversy is going to make people want to go see or want to go rail against Brie Larson, or if she's trying to rile up women, it's going to stir them up and make them want to go do what? Spend money on Brie Larson and on Marvel. So at the end of the day, it's kind of there's a point to some of this stuff too.
Yeah, totally fair. I want to go to Tara and Ryan. I will go to Tara first, then Ryan. I just want to know because I want to kind of get into this and then maybe get off the Brie thing, anyways. But here's the thing: I think, frankly, she's making the first female Marvel movie ever, right? I think that it's fair to say that that is sort of a female empowerment movie. I think that's totally fair. I think that on the press tour for that film, there is likely to be a lot of that kind of stuff, right? And so I guess what I want to go, I'll go to you, Tara. What did you think about the comment in the context? What did it do for you? Just share your thoughts about everything we've been talking about. I'm sure you have some ideas.
I do. Okay, I saw the movie first, and I thought the movie itself was dry. And then I saw her comments, and it turned me into a Captain Marvel hater.
Hmm.
And I'm a female, so I don't feel the same about dealing with men the way that y'all are talking about. I feel that way about having to deal with women because they get emotional and
Sure.
they lose their logic, and it's hard to have a discussion. So I feel like she's a movie star. She's already done movies. She knew what she was doing. And she came out and, as Al said, came sideways with it. She knew exactly what she was doing. And it's just taken the wrong way because she's being so forceful with it. And it's not something that's organic. And an example I use is like A Long Kiss Goodnight. That's a strong female lead, and it's not approached in the same way.
Yeah.
So we have the strength and we have the female empowerment and whatnot, but it's not, you don't have to tell anybody that that's what you're doing. It's just there. And I feel like that's where she went wrong. And I feel like that's why she's got so much hate. And like Wonder Woman, for that movie, she stopped an interviewer and said, hey, this movie is for women and for men and for boys and for girls. It's for everybody. And when you single people out, you're creating more of a divide. And I feel like that's what's going on so often in this country. And with movies, with politics, with everything. Okay, we have toxic masculinity. Okay, so let's swing to toxic femininity. And neither are good. We need to come together in the middle.
Yeah.
And Brie she swung the pendulum so far over to the toxic side.
Yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate the take. My thing is, I think that you're onto something when it comes to sort of delivering the message in a way with nuance, right? I think that the heavy-handedness is sort of a big complaint of people, right or left, is like the sort of heavy-handedness of it. But I will say this: I personally don't think the movie is egregiously like hitting you over the head with that idea. I think it's fair play. That's just my opinion. I think it's fair play. I think her comments were it was just so poorly executed because when I go back and watch it, I feel like, so she's being interviewed by this female. She's sort of being led. The female's black, so she feels the need to sort of go there as well and be like, but it's especially hard for women of color. You know what I mean? And she's like, it's almost like in her head, she's making sure she checks all of her progressive boxes. But like, to me, it's just a case of bad, like, just lack of perspective in a moment. I think if the spotlight wasn't on her as much, if maybe we weren't post 2016, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal. But yeah, I feel like I think it's fair that the comments were absolutely ridiculous. But as for me, I don't think the film is really that as bad. Do you think the film is that bad, Tara, as far as sort of pushing that really hard, or?
No, I don't think that message is not really there as it's not even a thing in the movie to me. The movie, it wasn't great. I mean, I didn't enjoy the movie as it was before I heard the comments.
Right.
Which I got to see it untainted before the comments. But, I feel like her comments, just like I feel like Ewan McGregor's comments for Birds of Prey are doing the same thing in pushing us so far away so we don't see the movie untainted. And then it gets hard to separate the two. They're enmeshed with each other.
Yeah. What do you think, Ryan? You got some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Brie, she's an actress, not a public relations person. So, I think when the movie was coming out, we she knows, Marvel knows that most of the people that are going to be watching this or are in the chat are male, so they already have us. So I want to say that you know she was trying to rile up the female base to want to come out and watch a Marvel movie that wouldn't just normally go out with their boyfriends on a date night or something like that. Um, at the end of the day, this is about like politics and fandom and in pop culture, and that means money, and that's where that's where the divide comes in. Is when are your messages trying to get into my pocket, and that's where that's where the danger comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, and I want to just go around the panel and get everybody's thoughts on this next point. I think that's a big part of it, is that for people that are really they're really against sort of any kind of political thing, but it does seem to be more left stuff being pushed in, right? I think a big thing is that people don't want to pay to go experience something that might be escapism or something that might just be entertainment, and they don't want to pay a company to then receive a message that feels essentially kind of like Orange Man bad. You know what I mean? Like, I know this is a hot thing to say, and I know this it's so divided right now, but frankly, 65 million people voted for that dude. Now look, just being honest, I was not one of those people, but I'm not going to act like all of those people are heinous idiots. And I think that some of it does come down to that thing where it's like, how can a company expect you to pay money for their product and for their entertainment and then literally feel preached to in their entertainment? What do you think about that, Ken? I want to go to you first. Like, what are your thoughts on that kind of a relationship, I guess?
I think it's interesting how people say they don't want politics in their pop culture, and especially in Star Wars. Like, Star Wars is like inherently political. I mean, George Lucas has made so many comments about I believe he compared the Emperor to like the Bush administration.
Yeah, in the prequels, it was pretty much, yes. It was it takes a lot from like Cheney and all that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is just my personal take, but I don't know. I haven't really felt like, okay, there's too much politics getting into my pop culture, and I haven't really personally kind of desired there to be kind of more of a separation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just because, for me, in like, especially like in Star Wars, it just felt like natural and kind of integral to the story that they're telling. And so it doesn't feel out of place. Now, if in the prequels, Obi-Wan were to kind of turn to the camera and start lecturing us about like what good democracy is, that would be a little weird. But like, at least as far as Star Wars is concerned, I felt like it was always kind of weaved into the story, and it made kind of sense. Like it was able to relay a message without being so explicit or over like without kind of detracting from the overall experience. So I haven't personally really kind of felt that.
Gotcha. Al, thoughts?
Yeah, man. I feel like Ken, to the degree I don't really see pop or politics in pop culture as big of an issue as it's made to be now. I think that, kind of going off of what you said, us being in this post 2016 era, we're all hypersensitive to any inkling of politicism in anything whatsoever at this point. I think we're all kind of, in a way, subconsciously chomping at the bit to kind of attack something, whether we want to co-sign for what it is or whether we want to kind of call it out and say, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's kind of, that's where we are now. And I mean, me personally, from a debate aspect and a conversation standpoint, I'm always for the smoke when it comes to that stuff, because I feel like these are conversations that have been kind of swept under the rug for years, for decades, and it's about time that we're able to sit and show that like logically minded people can have rational people can have these conversations.
Right.
I think it's beautiful that we can have a conversation even about, you know, the whole Brie Larson situation and Captain Marvel and what female representation means, and kind of hear opinions from both sides, because that wasn't we didn't even have that option 10, 15 years ago. So the fact that we're now here, for me makes me feel really good to know that we've reached a place where these things are even talked about at this point. And I mean, yeah, there's always this slant, like you said, after 2016, everybody wants to turn it into a controversy or this huge thing. And I just don't see it that way. I feel like it's conversation. I don't feel like any of this stuff is egregious. Yes, there are certain movies where it seems like they're trying to hit you over the head with a message, but even in those films, I don't really see it as a problem necessarily, because it's not something, like you said, it's not like you and McGregor's turning around and lecturing you about kind of the political aspect of Star Wars or anything like that. So
Yeah.
for me, it's like much ado about nothing, but I love the conversation about it, because at least that's happening, and we're getting to see perspectives that we didn't necessarily get to see before.
I mean, that's a great take. I like that take. I think you're reading some of the conversations out there a little bit more optimistically than I am, because I see like pitchforks and knives in some of these. But I do. I think it's a cool take. Tara, what do you think? What do you think about the messaging in pop culture? Where's the line? Is it absurd to try to preach to people and expect their money? What do you think?
I do. I mean, I agree with Alex. Good that we're having the conversations, but I think that the environment is so bad right now that we're having conversations that are hostile. Like, the topic coming up is great if we can all be logical and have these kind of discussions where we, you know, Ken and I do not agree on a lot, like politics and stuff like that. And I think we're still able to have logical conversations, but the majority of the internet and social media is not able to do that. And I feel like the movies right now, that's what they're using to line their pockets. They're banking on that, and it feels wrong if it's being forced.
Yeah.
We're going to do this movie so we can get this opinion because we're going to incite these people, and these people will support us, and that just feels wrong to me.
Yeah.
I don't agree. And you know, if we get to the I don't have faith that the internet or social media or society as a whole can have those logical discussions. I disagree with you on this, but you know, let's look at what we have in common and let's see why we have these differences.
Yeah.
We're not there, and we're so far from there right now.
Yeah. Well, I
So
certainly.
it just
Yeah.
Go
I mean,
ahead.
I just certainly think that there's always been money in division. And I think particularly at a time now, like one of the things that's sort of an underlining of this whole issue is the fact that like journalism itself is sort of disappearing as a industry. And so in order to hold on to whatever they have left in the land grab, they're resorting to be very clickbaity and like very sort of either aggressively it's either SJW's bad or Orange Man bad, and the reason is because it gets clicks, and they're basically just trying to hold on. So I think the media really doesn't do us any favors with as far as making these conversations less divisive. I think that they're amping it up. They're amping it up for clicks because I don't think they particularly care too much about the actual points themselves. But Ryan, what do you think, man? Where's the line? Is it crazy to have to get preaching in your pop culture, or are stories always about morality? What do you think?
At the end of the day, like to kind of jump on Al's point, it's important that we're even having these, and like as much as it's overdriven, and America's a great place. It is because we get to do this. I don't necessarily think there is a line. In order for things to change, you have to be able to cross the line, but just do it in a respectful way. But sometimes that can't happen. I mean, I know it's we're in a day and age where this is all new to all of us. I remember my dad when I was a kid. There was still a big get women to register to vote, because not enough women were registering to vote. So I was down at the high school as like an 8-year-old, like helping to do things like that. And like, everyone on the internet and anyone young hears that now, they think that's crazy. But we're still in a time where, there was a big shift in communicating with people and being able to talk to people and different types of people. So everyone's opinion on something just kind of got mashed together in a very short amount of time. But when it comes, so eventually it's going to kind of seep into the things you watch and listen and love to do. But now you're hearing everyone talk about it, so you get defensive. So I don't think there is a line. You got to be able to kind of cross it and then see where it lands and how the dust settles. Like Al was saying, it's all about the smoke. And, you kind of have to rile up in order to get something accomplished or see something change.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair point. Do you want to do me a favor? Does somebody want to drop the link into the YouTube chat, and we'll start seeing people kind of pop in to see if they want to come in. Guys, again, all you need is StreamYard to come in here. Depending on how many people actually jump in off of this link, just give me some time. You might be chilling in the studio for a second before we get in. Get anybody else in here. But one quick point that I want to just kind of get into as we get some other voices in here. Is it how much of this is just normal? Because I think that there's always been sort of arguments about this, but it really does feel like it's sort of intensified in the past couple of years. How much of the outrage do you think is actually genuine? And how much of the outrage is sort of outrage for outrage's sake? Let's start with Ken on that, but real quick, let's bring the T-Rev in, Mr. Trev. I believe this is Trev Fishman. What's up, Trev?
Yo. Yeah, it's Trevor.
What's going on, man? Can you hear us all okay?
Yeah, I can hear you guys good.
All right, cool.
No worries.
All right, so we'll start with Ken on this, and then we'll go to Al, and then we'll jump to you, Trev, okay?
Sure, man.
Ken, how much of this outrage is real, and how much of it is maybe theater, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I'll just kind of respond to this, and then I gotta hop off. Got a big exam in the morning, but I don't know. It's really hard to quantify. Kind of like a point you made before about how just some of these things are just so hard to really put a number on. But again, I do think it is probably a lot more than we would think. A lot more of this outrage is just outrage for outrage's sake than we would think. And I think it's further amplified by kind of these echo chambers that we've all created for ourselves on social media.
Yeah.
Like, if you go on Twitter or on Facebook, I'm definitely guilty of this myself, but like a lot of the pages and such that we'll follow, just kind of circulate views that we already agree with.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, they're just created just to incite a reaction. And we talk about this a lot in kind of some of my more behaviorally oriented classes. And I'm in a few poli-sci classes right now. We talk about this there too, but just like especially on the internet, just there often, like, we talk about misinformation a lot and how, you have these different outlets kind of take a different story and word it in a certain way just to incite this kind of reaction that they know they'll see in their kind of intended target audience. And I just think, kind of the only real hope we have of kind of diffusing some of that, and kind of taking away some of that kind of unnecessary outrage is kind of, intentionally kind of surrounding ourselves with different sources.
Yeah.
Even things we might not agree with, whether it's a news source or someone on Twitter that we might follow who we don't agree with, because then you kind of get a balance of that kind of generated outrage, and they kind of neutralize each other a little bit. So then you're kind of left with a little bit more of what's real. If that makes sense.
No, I totally can appreciate that. I think that's a good point, man. It's a lot of it's psychology based. You know what I mean? I think that there's a lot of carrot and a lot of stick guiding a lot of people. You got to try to take a step back a little bit. You know what I mean? But yeah, do you got to get out of here, Ken?
Yeah, unfortunately, but it's been good, guys. Really
yeah,
appreciate
man. Thanks for coming on.
Easy, man.
Good luck, brother.
Yeah, good luck
Yeah,
on
good
the
luck,
exam,
guys.
bro.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck,
Peace.
man.
Peace out, man. All right, so we will bring in Trinity and then Maverick. I see you in there, buddy. We'll get you in just a second, okay? All right, so we got Trinity from Second Street Marvel. What's going on, brother?
What's going on? How you all doing today?
I'm doing
Hi,
good.
Trinity.
How you doing, dude?
Good. Al, let's jump into you, man. I just want to know, like, how much of this outrage you think is made up? How much of it is legit?
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to quantify when you talk about the internet because a lot of that stuff it's just really hard to parse. But if I had to kind of guess, I would say it's more of a like I was maybe 50-50. I would also kind of position it this way. I think a lot more of it is legitimate, is more legitimate than we think. But I think it's almost I call it kind of the firecracker scenario, right? It's this quick fuse, everybody blows up to this one thing, and then it kind of reaches ahead, and then 24 to 48 hours later, nobody's talking about it.
The
Or it's
24-hour news cycle.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's kind of a
Yeah.
and I think the media has kind of learned how to play off of that, and so a
Yeah.
lot of things get amped up. A lot of things get kind of made to be these bigger deals than they really would be if you were talking about them, from a global standpoint as opposed to in a vacuum. So that's where it starts to get kind of confused because again, you look at it from our perspective, it's like we're nerds, we're all into this pop culture thing. So we're watching these news cycles, we see what's going on, we're following these things. Brie Larson makes a comment, everybody's jumping on it, we're all parsing and trying to figure it out. But the bigger picture, how many people are actually talking about this that don't give two shits about Marvel? So it's
Right.
like it's a thing for us, and it's but for the bigger perspective, it's like, dude, it's not as serious as we think. But to just dismiss it and say, oh, this isn't a thing at all, these are just people that are trying to be on the internet and showing out. To your point, 65 million or 65% of the country voted for for Trump. So clearly, some of these feelings are coming from somewhere. It's just I don't think that the internet is the true representation of those people. I
Right.
think, and I think that's where the differentiation lies.
I think that's totally fair. Ryan, I'll go to you next, man. What do you think?
Yeah, and like what Al was saying, just like the thing that pops into my head was I mean everyone watched the Super Bowl yesterday. Did anyone see the introduction to the pregame? Did anyone see it where they were talking about it was like a vignette thing and it was all black and white talking about how the NFL loves the flag and all this other stuff. And I
They
was
went
like,
hard on that PR, bro. They
it went so hard.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm just kind of like, we're still on people kneeling for the flag. I haven't heard that all football season, you know, and I don't follow it enough. Like, I don't watch enough or stay on top of it. But I was like, this was, and we talk about the 24-hour news cycle. I was like, why are we hitting this again? And it's kind of like hitting it to hit it for hitting sake. And I was just, why are we here? Why are we doing this? I thought, we moved past this, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, that's true. I mean, like, I'll just say one comment on that is like, I definitely told when I was watching with my friends, I was like, dude, this is crazy. They've got the military behind the national anthem. They've got the military behind the coin flip. I was like, I'm just like, in my producer brain, I'm just like, this is so obviously public relations all over the place. Now,
you don't have to be a producer. Like,
no, you don't.
Like,
no, you
they're
don't.
like,
You're right.
oh yeah, we get it.
Yeah,
I think I'm pretty sure the NFL has a deal with the U.S. military, right? So.
Oh yeah, they do.
Who does?
So the NFL has a deal with the U.S. military.
Yeah.
For like sponsorships and all that kind of stuff, right? So.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, look, they clearly know. Yeah, the potential damage that happened there and what they've got to do. But let's go to Trinity, one of the wisest, most zen people on YouTube. Are you not subscribed to Second Street Marvel in the chat? Because I'm disappointed in you if you are not. But Trinity, tell me about the outrage a little bit, but also you've been hearing us talk, man. I'm sure you got some thoughts. Just, take us to school, man. Educate these people on this panel, bro.
Well, the first thing is like, as far as like the outrage that's out there, I think there's enough of it that's real, but we're also, I mean, you got to look at who are we talking about here? We're talking about the nerds out there, like all you guys here that are out there on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, living in the nerd culture where all this stuff is going on right now. I have friends who aren't into any of this stuff that have all the same feelings about all the same kind of stuff as well. But they're just not that into it. So I mean, we're probably not even getting like even not even really good close to accurate numbers to how everyone feels about it. Because like I said, I've got good friends that feel all the same way about Brie Larson and what she said in this interview, and they don't watch the MCU. They don't care about the MCU.
Yeah.
And a lot of those different things. And I mean, even going to that point where you guys were talking about earlier, her comments that she made, they're not inappropriate comments if you said something like that the right way. It's the way that she went about saying them. Now the thing is there's people out there who aren't going to get over that, who just care too much about what she said, and that's fine. People have their own opinions when it comes to the representation or their personal political views and things like that being expressed in that sort of way. And we can see that a lot of stars use that as their platform anytime that they're anywhere anyway. I think a lot of them need to probably think a little bit more about what they say before they get on these platforms. But some of them don't care because they're all about that. You know what I mean? Because they are so secluded from, I mean, I guess all of us out here in the real world as well. But other than that, like all that outrage is out there. I think there's enough of it that's real. But the overall thing is how much does any of it really matter? I mean, we're talking movies here. You know, we're talking nerddoms. You know, fandoms. You know, it's is everything that's going on really worth it? You know, like you say, people make content skewed this way, skewed that way. You know, and really like it's really all the ways. I mean, because that's what it is. It's just which sect do you buy into? Do you roll with? And do you shut out other people and other views and stuff like that? And that's what you shouldn't do. Is you should want to hear all people's thoughts and views. But that's just me. I mean, I was I'm an old man, I guess, so I like to listen to a lot of people and hear.
And that's funny, Trinity. That's what Brie Larson was saying, right? Bring more people to the table. That's what she was saying, but it didn't come across in a way that was perceived
right
by anybody nicely.
Yeah, exactly. And so but I always want to hear other people's thoughts on things, and people should be open to hearing other people out. That doesn't mean you have to like it. That doesn't mean at least hear them out, and you can go upon your way. If you don't like hey, whatever, and just leave it alone. And that's the thing is in what's going on nowadays is nobody can ever just leave anything alone. Just if you don't like something, you got to keep letting everybody know that you don't like it.
Right.
Also, by the same token, if you love it, you got to keep telling everybody you love it. It's a double-edged sword, really. The whole thing, really. We're nerds.
Yeah. No, I got you. Go ahead, Trev. Do your thing, man. Educate this panel. I know you got some stuff to say.
I'm just, like I said, I think it's about maybe like 25-75 that there's like actual people trying to like force the mob mentality, right? Like it's not like I don't think it's as prevalent. It's just there's a mob, and it's really easy to set a mob to go one way, this way, a collection of people that have shared interests, right?
Sure.
And I don't know, man. It's just my thoughts are all over the place on this kind of thing. Like it's just because you're inundated with so much media all the time. Like, and I'm not American for like I'm Canadian myself, so I see all this stuff. Like we get a lot of American media, a lot of American news all the time, right? But like and online, it's everything about Trump, everything about whatever. But like it's just like I don't know. Like I said, I'm having a hard to go with what Trinity was saying. Like on the we're also with the social media. Like we're saying like everyone wants to say they love something. Everyone wants to say they hate something, and that's part of the age we're in, where we're sharing all our thoughts all the time. And it's as our society and technology has evolved, it just seems like this is a point we're getting to where this is our interaction with the pop culture that we love. Like this is that we want to talk about, right? This is the form of interaction that we're at. Like this wasn't like this,
right?
20 years ago, like when Phantom Menace came out, this wasn't like there was message boards and stuff like that, but there was nowhere near the way, like when we say like people say they hated the Phantom Menace, like for example, like the way they say, or whatever, like the way it wasn't. You you
That's
didn't hear
loud.
that.
Right.
You didn't hear that at all. The way you hear, I hate the Rise of Skywalker. I hate the Last Jedi. It wasn't anywhere near the way it is on the way it circulates the internet, the way it circulates internet shows and media and everything else. Like it's nowhere near as close. So it's just, I think the evolution of technology and the way the people utilize it, the way, for example, the way you want to utilize it, right? Like it's just how it is.
Yeah, it didn't. You're absolutely right. It didn't exist before, and it's a whole new thing where sometimes the commentary about the movies is just as entertaining and just as engaging as the product themselves. And I think that's literally what the Den is predicated on. It's predicated on this idea that like media has changed, and now people want to interact with set photos and 4chan leaks. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what, frankly, that's what people like want to be talking about. A vast majority of people want to talk about those things. They want to engage in these ideas. And so, yeah, I agree that it's really, really, it's definitely changed. It's definitely changed.
Well, and I'm just saying that because then there's the downside of that. There's the good things of that. And we're looking at the downside of that and how it interacts with pop culture and how politics interact with pop culture and how we're seeing just how many more people are using this stuff and how many more people have voices. Go ahead though, John.
Well, here's what I'll say. I want to go to Tara. I'm sorry, Ryan, 1 second. I want to go to Tara, and then you can make your point, and then I might pop you and Al out for a little bit so we can bring in Maverick, and we got Matt Jarbo down there too, just so we can pop them up and kind of try to keep it rotating. But Tara, how much of this outrage is fake? How much of it is real? How much of it should be real? What are your thoughts about the outrage towards the political stuff?
I think I agree with Alice. Probably, I mean, if you look at people who are not nerds and aren't into this kind of stuff, I think you'd probably find it's about 50-50 with how people feel about it. But I think as nerd, like doing what we do, we have our kind of finger to the pulse. And so we hear more about it. But a lot of the people that I interact with online tend to be teenagers who, they jump on a bandwagon because it's the popular thing to do. They get the clicks, they get the likes, and it's fun. They get to, oh yeah, and then they get to hype up and, world star everything and make that into an internet thing. But, I don't think it's really as bad as it's made out to be. I think people just do it because it's, if you talk shit, you get a lot of clicks. And it's kind of like when LeBron went out to talk about Kobe and he was like, yeah, I wrote all these cards and I'm not going to say that shit.
Yeah.
People want to see that. They want to see the drama. They want to be part of the drama. And it gives people a way to be a part of that community, even though they don't care. And so we get kind of skewed numbers on who really does care and who doesn't. But, I think it's not really, I think we have, as nerds in the YouTube community, we have kind of a skewed view because we hear all the bad stuff and that's what gets the clicks. So, we have our finger to the pulse in a different way than other people.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Ryan, what were you going to say? Do you still have your point?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on what Trev was saying, back at when the prequels were coming out, we didn't have the kind of, platforms to be able to say these things, and we also didn't have the platforms that have so much confirmation bias as we do now. Like you can go and find someone who thinks the same way you do, and you can just sit on it, and the algorithm's just gonna feed it to you. And a lot of people in fandom that sorry, older people, but they don't understand how the algorithms work, and the fact that you're being fed the same info that you're searching. So if you're kind of like what Ken was saying, trying to find other sites and other sources of information, it's, if you don't actively try to do that, you're just going to get fed the same stuff over and over and over, and it's going to turn that mob mentality into a tornado.
Yeah,
even just the search results on Google, even just the search, it's just everything that Android takes from you or Google takes from you. But,
yeah, dude. Yeah, man, we're at a precipice with that stuff. Personally, that's something that terrifies me, actually. And I'm someone that actively works within that algorithm, right? So, I understand it pretty well. And one of the last posts I ever made on Facebook, you can look it up. It's like I literally made this post where basically like the robots are coming for us. These I was like, these algorithm things are absolutely insane. I was like, I'm out. I said this will be the last post I ever make on this Facebook page. As much as you can, you need to limit yourself from social media. And I know this might be ironic because I make money from social media algorithms, but I'm telling you, as someone that understands it very well, you need to run away as fast as you can.
Are you broadcasting from Pennsylvania or like a log cabin in Montana somewhere?
Yeah, man. Oh, I'd love it, dude. I'd love it. That'd be the way to go. I'm pretty close. But Al and Ryan, I'm gonna take you guys out just so we can bring Matt and Maverick in. And then if maybe as some people rotate out, we can grab you back in.
Cool.
All right, guys. Thanks again for being here. And if you could do me a favor, maybe monitor that chat. Make sure they're being good. Are they being good down there?
They're always good.
Okay, good. All right, let us bring in Maverick Pilgrim and Matt Jarbo. What's going on, guys? How we doing tonight?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Nice beard.
Got you good. Maverick, how you doing, brother?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, man. Got you.
Right on.
Got you loud and clear. Let's start with Matt, and then we'll go to Maverick. Matt, you've been hearing us talk a lot about it. You're in the space. What are you thinking, man? What's your thoughts on politics and pop culture? You probably have some thoughts about some of the things we've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, politics and pop culture have gone hand to hand since the beginning of pop culture, right? I mean, that's just an excuse. There's no other way to describe it. We've always had political messaging in pop culture one way or the other. Generally, it's left-leaning because most of the people who write this stuff live and work at LA. So as long as it's presented in a fine way, most people don't even recognize it. So it's not even that big of an issue. But in the age where everything is completely politicized, and it doesn't matter who says what, if there's a spin on it, people are going to freak out and go off on it because they can find a way to make money doing it. And they don't care that they lie to people. They don't care because they get that paycheck. And so to them, it validates all the crap that they do.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of agreements with that. What do you think, Mav? I'm sure you have some thoughts, man. You've been sort of watching us talk for a while. What do you think?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts. I mean, using Star Wars as kind of a launching point. People say that Star Wars never really had any politics until the sequel trilogy, but politics has been a part of every movie for forever. What happens a lot of times, the conversations, they happen and then they become part of just normal understood conversation, and then when we look back on those things, they don't look political anymore. So like, for instance, It's a Wonderful Life. You guys have all seen It's a Wonderful Life?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
It was highly political at the time for one reason. At the very end of the movie, spoiler alert, I don't know if I have to go in for that movie from the 40s, but Mr. Potter doesn't get his comeuppance. That was the first time in Hollywood a movie came out where the bad guy didn't get punished in some way.
Interesting.
Because it was seen as, the movie itself is about, there are things that are bigger than that. There's more than that, right? It's almost a forgotten point, but that was such a big deal at the time. Citizen Kane had a whole campaign in the media against it. We look back on it, it's a great movie. It almost didn't get released because it was way too on the nose at the time about a very intense political figure who actually was a major media mogul. And it almost didn't get released. We look back on it, it's benign.
Right.
It's no big deal. But a lot of this, we look back and say, like, oh, it's 2016 was where this happened. I think a lot of this happened over 2012. 2012, the Smith-Mundt Act was actually repealed. It was like shoved into some other legislation. But that was the Anti-Propaganda Act.
Right.
States. And it allowed anybody to put out propaganda. And, I'm not an alarmist trying to say all your media is, tipped sideways or anything, but that has to be remembered.
Sure.
That's no longer something that anyone can get in trouble for, because that's taken away. So you have people like the Lear Foundation sliding things into movies, into TV shows, bringing in highly influential folks to sort of point stories one direction or the other. One of the biggest ones, I'll let someone else talk, was All in the Family. What's his name? Archie Bunker.
Yeah. Carol.
All right. Yeah. So okay. So I probably won't make any friends saying this.
Carol
but
O'Connor in All in the Family, right?
Yes. Yeah. So Archie Bunker is seen as one of the most like volatile characters. So what they did was at the time, and this is all Lear Foundation stuff, they put out this character who at the time pretty much embodied what was thought the like caricature of a Democrat. But then they said he was a Republican.
Interesting.
The more popular that show was and the longer it ran, it actually twisted the public perception. And that's sort of seen as one of the items that helped to shift a lot of politics during the modern era, was because of the shift there.
Isn't that when like the Democrats went from being like Dixie Democrats to more the way they are now, like just like the decade before that, right?
Yep, and that was the social part of it. So what actually needs to be part of this conversation, it's not so much about politics, it's about social engineering. How much of what we're seeing is actually social engineering, not just politics getting thrown in, because politics have been thrown into stuff forever.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. As far as the social engineering, just off the top of my head, I think that this is one of the things that people get concerned, whether it's a boogeyman or not, particularly with these stories like Star Wars, maybe with Marvel, but not so much, but with things like Beauty and the Beast and like the new version of Beauty and the Beast and these things like that. Part of the reason that people, I think, get so upset about the potential political or social engineering that is in these things is that they feel like the myths are sort of sacred and that the myths themselves should be sort of set in stone and they have their meaning. And then if something comes in to sort of co-opt or take over that, I think that's where a lot of these people are getting concerned. So like you have people that will say inflammatory things about this because they do feel really passionate. We were just talking about how much do we think is real or how much do we think is fake of the outrage, right? There are some people that literally think, man, that there's this political war with people and the powers that be injecting stuff into our myth to like, look, I'm going to meme it a little bit, but to basically turn the frogs gay. It's kind of like what it is, right? It's like you're coming in, it's like you're warping the mind. How much? So Mav, I just want to go back to you. Do you think that's mostly bull, or do you think that there is potentially some of that we should be concerned about?
Well, I think that's always been a part of it. Did you say Mav or Matt? Sorry.
Let's go Mav, and then we'll go Matt. Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
Okay. I think that's always kind of been there. Every single story ever told has an agenda. Whether it's intense or not intense, even Dumb and Dumber. Dumb and Dumber has an agenda. The agenda is that two doofuses who are friends can somehow make it. You know, I mean, it's every single story has an agenda, has something there. The question is that if it's really threatening or not. And honestly, if you're pretty settled where you're at, mostly you're not afraid for yourself, you're afraid for others. So some people twist the watch out, everybody, watch out for this story, and it turns into we hate them somehow. I mean, somehow from one side of that, or if it's really a conversation, you can have a conversation. That shouldn't be threatening. But I think I was putting in the chat earlier, dichotomies. We want as many dichotomies as possible. When I say they, it's anybody who's in media or politics or anything, because dichotomies can be controlled. You're either one or the other. You're either a Coke or Pepsi. You know, and guess who loses in the Coke or Pepsi? Dr. Pepper. They're not even a part of it, you know. But it's
also, let's say, that line from like from Game of Thrones, chaos is a ladder.
Yeah.
When you're doing things and you're splitting people up and you're making people mad, you're making outrage, someone's profiting off that. Someone's using it as a ladder. But go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
It's in everything.
Matt, I know you got some thoughts, bro. Hit us.
No, I agree with Mav. Actually, pretty much, he kind of hit the point. There's not much more I can say on the subject. No, we do have a situation where people like to divide and conquer. Whatever, I mean, on just a pure human level, whatever we don't understand, we seek to destroy. So the best course of action is to keep people ignorant and uneducated, and then you can control their rage. I mean, to kind of put it into blunt terminology, a lot of what we're talking about is also how we view organized religion. Organized religion keeps you segregated, it keeps you separated, it keeps you focused on point, that you're working towards somebody else's higher power, but you're going to benefit. Sorry, my daughter is making noise in the background. I have to go in a second.
That's okay.
She's quiet till I start talking. That's how it works.
Yeah, she's freaking out. She hates your political messaging, Matt.
She's like, I want to watch Toy Story, damn it. So no, but that's the way I view it. Is this kind of propaganda and this kind of nonsense has a lot to do with how I view organized religion, where most people are completely understandable that they're pawns in the larger game. And so when we look at the media, we look at the propaganda, we look at a lot of people pushing the different agendas, and to see the response from the people who have literally no understanding about 90% of what they're hearing,
sure.
Then you start to see who kind of controls the puppet strings. And it's really funny when you start pushing back on the system and the people and the power structures of that system and how they react, right? I go back and forth a little bit with the, okay, kiddo, I got to go here. I got to run.
No,
she's freaking out. But basically, she's funny.
We all been, some of us have been there.
Yeah, thankfully, one of them is asleep. So I'm on baby duty right now.
Yeah.
But basically, it's when you start pushing back against the power structure, then you start seeing how it responds. And look at tonight. Tonight's the Iowa caucus. Bernie's currently leading the polls, and DNC is doing everything they can in their power to try to rig the election against him once again, because they're afraid of an outsider coming in. And that's a big part of where we see our modern politics and how then it gets amplified in other aspects of media. To kind of finish my point, when we talk about the injection of politics and pop culture, look to see who's profiting the most and look to see what their overall goal is. If you are a voice in this movement and you're not trying to move anyone you're not trying to benefit people, then you're trying to profit off of people. So if you're not about trying to make the game better and so everyone can play fair, then or advance things or fix things,
At least to some extent. Some people still are doing this as a job, a la Josh.
Yeah. No, but but Josh at least has opinions and he's at least speaking for the broader positivity.
Yeah.
Rather than sowing division in order to then create the chaos and the profit.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I'm going to go because she is not going to let me go.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Two-year-olds are wild, man. I love her to death, but yeah, she's giving me that look. So I'll talk to you guys all later. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for popping on, man. Gotcha. No big deal.
As always, follow the money. Follow the money. Right?
Yeah. I have some thoughts about that. Because I totally see the point that there's definitely people that just want to sow division for the division's sake, for sure. But I do think to a degree, so I have these conversations, and this will take a sort of a weird turn, where one of the reasons that the far left that is ridiculous, right? So obviously not reasonable people, talking about a small percentage of people that
Antifa.
Right would claim them, yeah, exactly, and they claim to be progressive social justice warriors or whatever. I think one of the dangers is frankly those people are not really scary on their own, but it more has to do with the ability of the sort of sense-making apparatuses of society. So storytelling, media, education, academia, these are fields that function to give people in society sense of our world. And so I think that to say that all of the messaging, or that we shouldn't be careful about the messaging, I think is a mistake. And there can be some stuff that's really lost in translation. And to me, a lot of these issues are super, super nuanced. It's not as simple as representation either does matter or does not matter. I think that's a hard line. It's not a good way to open up the conversation. But I have this knee-jerk reaction whenever somebody's it's just all of that, and we should just call it what it is and not get too down about it. Because I do think when it comes to story, it is sort of a sacred thing, and I think there are things that you could put into storytelling or to borderline propaganda, right? I mean, if you think about the ability of film to convey a message and to emotionally resonate with a person, it's very powerful. You know what I mean? It's been used to great effect and great evil and great, goodness. And so in some sense, I don't think that it's all just a boogeyman. And I don't know, anybody that wants to jump in can jump in on that, but
It almost sounds like you're saying we need a touch of gray.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. There should definitely be more gray in the world. It's certainly not as hard lined.
Sorry to keep talking if I feel like I dominate the conversation. But there's one thing that I try to teach my kids. I think there's a danger in the idea of being amused. Like, you look at the word amused means no thinking. It's like, it's fine to be entertained, but in your entertainment, you should not be without thinking. You should engage with what you're seeing. Otherwise, what's the point of the story?
Right.
Then that's what turns a story into what we get on TV, which is programming, right? You just turn off and you just take it in. We should always be engaged. So whenever I have 4 kids, I'm surprised you can't hear them. I got 4 girls, and we always, we'll watch a movie, and I'll stop it every so often to say, now, what is he really saying? What does this mean here? My kids probably hate me. But the idea is, like, we shouldn't ever come to the place where we just take things in our eye gate and just let it all come in. We need to check those Trojan horses before they come in and say, like, oh, actually this one's empty, but I'm glad we checked.
Yeah.
We should always be having the conversation. Otherwise, what in the world are we all doing on here? Because that's what we do. We're looking at it, we're interacting, and we're learning things, and we're having good conversation. And that's part of what story does. That's what myth does. That's what we should be doing for our media too, our news, everything.
Yeah, that's super fair.
Like you said, Mav, you said that people aren't scared for themselves, but they're scared for others. And to the point that you just made, I had written down a note that, my kids are in school, and it scares me because what they're learning is not how to think for themselves. They're learning how to be somebody controlled by those puppet strings.
There you go.
So,
yeah.
And that's troubling. So I homeschool my youngest, and I put my oldest back in public school in 7th grade. So he's been there for 3 years. And it's just seeing what they're learning and how they learn these days. It makes me concerned that the propaganda that we see, I'm not scared about my thinking. I know I have my own thoughts. I'm very vocally outspoken, and, but I'm scared for my kids because this kind of stuff is very influential, and they are being taught to just be led, not to lead.
But saying that, I think we got similar education. Like, I mean, I think there was a lot of stuff that was like, for example, okay, like I'm probably older than a lot of you guys. Like, I'm 39, but like, I'm telling you that, like, it's like in the 90s and stuff like that. All my education was about, like, how they're all talking about, like, save the planet now. We had all that stuff in the 90s. We had all the same things. Like, I don't know how many reports I did on acid rain and all that.
Yeah.
Like, and not to say that that's propaganda necessarily, but like, we're learning these things specifically, and they're force feeding you them all the time. And like, it's just, as you get older, I like to think that you have more, you're exposed to more things, right? That's the whole thing. You expose more things, you get more experience, you get more world experience. So, well, you see some things in your children now where they're like, you have to be docile in school. Like, you can't, like, there's no acting out, like the whole thing where like boys are having trouble in school and all that kind of stuff. But like, I don't know if you guys ever read about those kind of things, but like, it's because they act out more often than girls do. Right. but anyway, like, it's just all these things we're dealing with. Like, but I just want to say, it's not that much different today as it was 25 years ago, in my opinion, anyway.
I mean, it feels like it is to me. I've got 2 boys, so that article that you're talking about, I read that. Actually, there's books on it.
Yeah.
But, I feel like I was in a gifted and talented program, so I feel like the way that I learned specifically was different. So I learned how to think. I learned logic problems. It wasn't what to think, it was how to think. And the way that I went to school to be a teacher, so the way that it's taught now is a whole lot different. And they're learning to memorize for a test rather than actually learning information, how to seek out information. They're being fed it, and they want it regurgitated.
I agree with that as well. Yeah, go ahead.
I think really all this comes down to, though, is parenting. Is if you're a parent, you should be involved in your kids' lives and knowing what's going on, instilling your values in them. Really, people are too reliant on the school system in the first place, and count on the school to do everything when you've got to do that stuff yourself. They're just there to learn the stuff. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I didn't graduate high school. I dropped out of high school. But the thing is I see plenty of people who went and graduated high school. Like, really, all they did, like, they just went and did some testing, memorized some answers, and there you go. You graduate. That's you got your diploma.
Right.
The thing is it comes down to the parenting, the values that you instill in your children, getting them into extracurricular activities if you want them to do more, depending on what they want to do with their lives as they're growing up and everything. Get them into music, get them into acting, into the arts, any of those kinds of things. Or if they want to be a doctor, or just whatever it is that they want to do, you got to foster that growth in them, while they're children. So you got to be present in their lives and raise them, because as we can see right now, and it's always been this way. And this is where the whole politics and the movies, whether it's the comic books and the films or music or anything like that, it all comes down to something political anyway. It's just whether it's something you agree with or not. That's the thing that like, even all these channels out here on on YouTube, even all the websites and everything out there, just the same as all the news sites, they're all skewed to somebody's to what you want to see. You want to see about the left, you look on the channels for the left. You want the right, you go there, for those sources. And of course, you get those hate clicks, you go to the other side and you want some of their stuff too. But it ultimately comes down to that, is like when it comes down to it, you got to be ahead of the curve with your kids.
Yeah.
Because you got to make sure that you're present in their lives, instilling your values in them, because somebody else is going to be in there doing it before you know it. Especially with as exposed as they are to everything these days, with things like YouTube, with streaming services, just everything out there. You got. I mean, not only do you have to monitor it, but I mean, it's really just the way that it's always been, and is raising your kids right and getting them to realize and things for themselves, and also at the same time, like, realizing that we live in a world with a whole bunch of people. Everybody has different thoughts. Not everybody are good people, and not everybody is bad people.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's also weird, but you also have to do it too, because all of these politics these days and everything are part of, they're part of culture, and they're a part of pop culture.
Yeah.
Because all these things have always been expressions for people to express their political views. Rather, it seems like nobody ever talks about it in music. Like, it's more forgiven in music, because it's like you just hear it in one ear and out the other. You like the song, you don't like the song.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to like the comic books and movies, the stuff has always been there, but it's always usually in how the way it's done. Is it well written? Is it thought provoking? Not just something that's just so. I mean, but of course you get stories out there that are really just like really on the nose and things like that, because maybe it's a story that needs to be that.
Sure.
It really just kind of depends on the story that needs to be told. And I think when people out there talk about these nerd movies and everything we're talking about, we need to keep politics out of these films. This is escapism and all that stuff. Like, that's a little crap. Okay, nice. They're films, and not all films are escapism.
Right.
Yeah, you can't keep it out.
Yeah.
It's a matter of, like we were saying before in the chat, it's just like, it's how much you're affected by it and what magnitude it is and how it's woven into the story, etc.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to your writing, and it's always been there.
Yeah.
It's just now people seem to care about it more and voice it more, because we're in the social media age here.
Yeah, I think that, what I'm hearing, basically, just to kind of summarize and kind of put a button on it, I'm hearing a lot of, like, sort of, it's always been this way. I'm hearing sort of a lot of, like, that this is just something that's going to always have to be dealt with, and more or less that it's almost, I don't want to say much to do about nothing, but that the conversation has sort of elevated past, it's reached a new level, not because of any necessarily big changes that have happened to the process, but more because everybody now has a voice and everybody can now sort of articulate these opinions. I want to just introduce one more idea, and then we can kind of chat about this idea. And if anybody else wants to, if you guys are in the chat and you want to get on, we'll probably go for like 20 more minutes if anybody wants to jump in. So I've been thinking a lot about this. Is everybody here familiar with Jordan Peterson?
Yeah.
Does everybody know who Dr.
12
Peterson
rules.
is? Yeah.
12 rules.
Yeah, 12 rules. So basically, he talks a lot about myth and these stories and these sort of these ideas that are in myth that are really important. And like, for instance, one of the ones that I always think about is what's the one where she pricks her hand on the Cinderella, right? Where she pricks her hand on the thing.
Sleeping Beauty.
Sleeping Beauty. Thank you. So
Aurora.
right. So the whole idea with that film is to tell you that if you just protect someone from, like, if you're an overprotecting parent and you try to eliminate it, because the crux of that story really is that there's this prophecy, there's this vision, she will prick her finger on this thing and fall into a deep coma or whatever forever. And so the parent's solution in that story is to remove all the sharp objects from this girl forever. And then a portal opens up one day and there's a sharp object in front of her, and because she never had to experience that, she doesn't know what it is, she goes up and pricks it and falls apart, you know what I mean, and falls into the coma. And the whole idea of that story is you can't protect people. Like, if you try to overly protect someone and isolate them from the real dangers that are out there in the world, you're going to create a weak person.
Insulate them.
It's just like a flu shot. I mean, you get a flu shot and they put the flu virus in you so that you can be protected against that thing. Your body knows what to expect.
Right.
And like with my kids, they've watched horror movies. They know about everything. They're mini me's, which I know if y'all know me and have seen me in chat, it's terrifying. But they know everything, and they know about my life. They know about my experiences, and they're not protected from anything. They know what to expect, and it's like a flu shot. Honesty is like life's flu shot.
Yeah. Well, I think the larger point for me, the thing that is the point about politics and pop culture, is that the danger to me is, I feel like, and we just kind of touched on it with parenting and stuff, but I feel like the tendency is nowadays to really try to protect kids from getting out there and getting messy in the real world. And therefore, because we're kind of in this generation of, people being a little bit more soft, a lot more engagement with screens and interacting that way, is that as we get away from actual hardship and the films themselves, the pop culture becomes potentially a much bigger avenue for where a lot of these lessons are coming from. And so I guess, again, to sort of cycle back to it, what should be done about these political messages and the social engineering being put into this? I think that you guys have all sort of already touched on this, but just in the vein of that idea of particularly young people having less actual experience in the world and getting more of their info from, whether it be YouTube videos, TikToks, film, or whatever. What do you think is the solution? Like, how do we prep them?
Don't shelter them from the world. I mean, that's how I was raised. Like, I was kind of exposed to a lot of stuff, not by way of my parents always, but I had cousins. They had older brothers as well. My older cousins. I had uncles that were not too much older than me. Naturally, I hung around them, and we were exposed to things. And it's okay, and like every time I fell down, my parents weren't there, like, oh, are you okay? Are you okay? So many of these things that are going on in this world are easily preventable by, it comes down to the parenting thing.
Yeah.
By hugging your kids, letting them know that you love them, making a friend with somebody. I think that's one of the big things these days is everybody's so used to this whole YouTube thing, this whole social media thing. People take all this stuff so seriously.
They do.
And like this isn't that serious. This is YouTube. Like, and some of the things I see, like the way I see people acting, I'm like, do you actually ever interact with anybody in your real life ever?
Yeah.
Because to me it's just astounding, just like seeing some of these people this isn't real, and because people just take all this stuff far too seriously. Like, and again, it comes down to that thing. Like, these are just fandoms. Raise your kids right. Go make a friend. Be open and have conversations with other people that don't think the exact same thing that you do, and just be open to that. I think something I've been talking a lot about like this past week too is so many people are afraid of confrontation.
Yes.
Confront each other, whether it's online or in person or anything like that. Confrontation makes people uncomfortable, and people are afraid of that. And I get it. I wasn't always as good as I am now. Like, now I'm like a seasoned pro, and it's like sometimes I feel bad about that.
And going back to that, what he was saying earlier, that's maybe from parents insulating their kids a lot too. and not being exposed
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
to that kind of
100%.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what it really comes down to, and I think Robert St. Clair in the chat hit it on the nail on the head with his comment. He said, "Narrow-minded life starts at home," and I think that's very, very true in the sense that a lot of these thoughts and these opinions that we see online is just stuff that a lot of these teens and even adults. It's stuff that they grew up hearing, so it was cultivated in them that way. Like
Okay.
I was having a conversation with my daughter the other day, and we were talking about like the whole Kobe Bryant thing, but she mentioned that a kid at school had made the comment about LeBron not being the best basketball player of all time that Jordan was, or something, or vice versa, I think. And it was like the arguments that this kid was telling my daughter, you could clearly tell an 11-year-old doesn't have these opinions. I'm like, you're hearing them, and I had to explain to my daughter.
Jordan was 6-0 in the finals.
Right. And I'm like, he's hearing. That's what I'm telling my kid. I'm like, well, he's hearing this from his dad, which his dad's got a point, but like this kid doesn't know what he's talking about, babe. Like he's right, but it's not coming from him, and that's when you have to realize you step back. And a lot of this stuff is really absorbed by kids. And it's spot on what Tara said. You've got, and I think everybody else said to share the same sentiment. It all comes down to what information are you exposing your children to and at what point? Like, as long as you are, as a parent, are giving your child a proper perspective of life and society overall, then that child's going to be better equipped to be adjusted to confrontation, to experiencing people with different beliefs, to being able to deal with and handle themselves in a situation where they're amongst an eclectic group of people, where you kind of start to break down some of those barriers of like tribal thinking and mentality and things like that. And you give your kids the ability. I mean, you think about it, like when I was growing up, I was kind of on the tail end of it, but there was this kind of dichotomy in my town where people from my side of town didn't travel to the north side, for example. It was like, nah, that's that side of town. We don't go over there because they don't like us over there. And so I literally my whole life, and I mean, I know I'm from San Antonio, Texas, which is like one big loop. And so I had never gone like north of one of the loops here until I was a grown ass man. And it was like, and I went and I'm like, oh my God, like I'd never even seen this side of San Antonio. And it wasn't from a lack of like ability. It was just, I was under the impression, I was like, nah, we don't go over there. And it's just, it's crazy though. And it was like, as you start to grow up, you start to experience different things, it really did open my mind. And it was like my parents, I feel like they did the best job that they could to raise me. Yeah. But some of that, some of the things that they were taught, it kind of systemically made its way to me, to where there were certain ideals that I was given that I had to kind of break that mold myself as an adult and say, you know what? I see where y'all were coming from, but I want my children to think in a different way. I want my kids to see things from a broader perspective. And it really does put you at a much more of an advantage and makes you more well adjusted, to where if you see a hint of politicism in a movie, you don't go batshit crazy and say, you know what, we need a petition for it. You understand where it's coming from and you keep it in its proper context.
Yeah.
Good point.
I think one of the things too is not just exposure, but then also how it's exposed. There's an old proverb: train up a child in the way that they should go.
Sure.
When they're old, hard for me. It's each kid is individual and specific. And real quick story: when my family, there's a lot of alcoholism, and so I had my cousins. They grew up where it was just zero alcohol in the house at all. Not even a question. And guess what? They're all alcoholics.
Right.
In my house, my dad.
I hear you.
My dad was real specific when he would have a beer or something, and I'm like 14. It's like, do you want to try this? I was like, okay. I was like, that tastes gross. He's like, yeah. If you ever want to have some, we'll have it together.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so it was never a mystery. It was never if I went to a party and I had a beer, he'd be like, why'd you have a beer there?
Right.
You have a beer with me here. So it was never a temptation. It wasn't a thing. There was never peer pressure. And, I never felt that pressure there because it was handled properly for me. And I would say that that's part of it too, is exposure with wisdom. So
I
That's what
love
I'm
it.
trying to do
watch
now.
those things with your kids.
Yeah.
Do those things. Have the conversations. Don't let them go on YouTube and make that how they share their
How they learn about
figure
life.
things out.
Right.
Do it with them.
100%, man.
Yeah.
Definitely. Tara, you got some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm on the whole thing. I mean, it just takes stepping away from your phone or from the computer for a little bit. And like Mav said, I mean, my kids are the same way. If you're going to do something, let's do it in the house with me where we're safe. I don't care if you do it, because I wouldn't have half the wisdom I have if I hadn't done half the dumb shit I had done.
That's true.
You
Yeah.
know, and
Mhm.
it's important. So, we all need to make sure we make those connections, and, not just with parenting, but even if you're younger, you don't have kids, go out and talk to your friends. At least take some time in the week to have real social connections, so that, we hear other people's perspectives and don't just shut people out because they're different. I think that's how we change it, is making those connections and taking a little step back from the internet.
Yeah. No, I like it a lot. All right, last thing I want to do, just because this is just kind of just popped in my head, and then we'll get out of here. But we're definitely going to do plenty of community chats in 2020. I felt like this was really fun. And guess what? It didn't crash. Knock on wood. It didn't crash yet. We're good. We're good, everybody. We're good.
Start using Opera instead of Chrome.
Yes, I am. Firefox, actually, instead of Chrome. But yeah. That was, I think still there's got to be some tinkering going on in Streamlabs. There's got to be a way to make it a little bit better. But here's my last thought. I think a lot of this stuff, as going back to like the text-based thing, man, like I get it. Look, I always try to keep this in perspective. When you do a video, like Tara and I just did this video about birds of prey, right? And we're probably going to do like a follow-up video and like a live stream about it, because there's a lot of like, in the comment section of that video, right? And I mean, like, I get it. And I try to keep it in context where if you're a person that's like working all day, and I have no illusions about the content that we make on the channel. Some people are really, really engaged in it, and that's awesome. Some people, it's bathroom break stuff. You know what I mean? It's like they got 10 minutes and they're putting on the video. It's all good. I get it. And so I can imagine, like, let's just say you had like a semi-stressful day or whatever, and then like you're really looking forward to DC, and you've also seen a bunch of people crapping on it because of left politics, right? And then you see this video, and I thought we were very fair and very nuanced and all that, but I can see, like, watching that video, having that day, and then you've only got like 30 seconds, and you got to get back on the job, and you make your comment. You know what I mean? And so when I look at the stuff, I try not to be like, and it's hard, right? Because I'm on there way more than most people, because it's my thing, right?
Especially if you're getting personally attacked or something, right?
Yeah. It can be really easy to be like, okay, like I'm really offended, and now I'm going to try to explain myself and try to explain the situation to this person. I almost feel like there's got to be a better way to do this communication, where I kind of wish more people would be like, hey, text really isn't the way to do this or whatever, but like, almost no offense was made. But I just am curious, does anybody here have any kind of an idea about how we could go about trying to make these conversations a little bit better and more positive online? Because I think some of the reasons I just stated, they can be perceived maybe more aggressive than they actually are.
You can't convey tone via text, right?
Right.
So
That's what emojis are for.
That's true. Emojis can really de-escalate something, though. I mean,
Facts.
True.
I think emojis do a lot more harm than they do good, though. Honestly.
Doesn't mean anyone's good at it.
I just wanted an eggplant.
True. Exactly. Yeah.
I've seen you read emojis though, Trinity, so maybe that's true for you.
I'm old too, though. I'm old, so maybe I don't know how to read them right.
Yeah.
I think we all might be a little bit older than some of the internet, but
yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Well, when I look at the demos on the channel, I mean, our largest demos are really like 25 to 45. 25 to 45 is where the majority of people are watching this stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm not really popping with the young kids. You know what I mean? Like they probably think I'm like alt-right or something. I don't know, for even having this conversation. But Yeah, I don't know, man. I just would wish, and for everybody that's watching this now or anybody that's watching this on the replay, I think this was a really good chat. And I think that the thing about some conversations like this versus conversations that take place in a comment section or on Twitter, you can really get to it and really try to see where you agree and feel where the person is coming from and feel where their tone is coming from. And if you're one of those people that did freak out in that Birds of Prey video, I urge you to come to the next community chat and, actually have your voice be heard, because I think, frankly, it would be fairly easy for both Tara and myself to explain our position in a way to make you to understand that it's not that we, hate women or whatever. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't know if anybody has any closing thoughts before we get out of here.
I mean, if you read a comment and you're not sure about the tone, be open-minded first and ask questions. Hey, did you mean it like this? Or ask questions to maybe have a conversation instead of instantly being defensive.
Yes, or going on the attack. Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Tara just said it. It's about asking questions. I mean, everybody's quick to jump into the comments and say, I'm going to give you my 2 cents in 160 characters or less. And then the follow-up is usually somebody that's trying to jump out. Well, now I've got to one-up your comment. Right. And it's like, take a minute and ask a damn question. Ask somebody, what did you really mean? Are you trying to say A, B, C, X, Y, Z? Be the reason or be the catalyst for the dialogue. Don't be the catalyst for conflict. If you kind of tailor what you're saying and what you're trying to say in the form of a question, you're bound to get a much more elaborate response than if you hit somebody with a fire emoji or some shit like that. It's like if you actually ask questions, if you ask questions, then you'll get answers. And for those people who don't answer you, right there, they're not interested in conversation, so you move on.
Fair.
Exactly. And and I'm willing to have those conversations. I have a lot of views that are not the same as other people. And if you ask me questions, I'm willing to have that conversation. So, just ask.
Same here.
Yep. Same.
Yeah. I don't think there's ever an excuse to be nasty or to be mean. You can anything you're going to say, you can say in a kind way. I don't think you don't ever have to be bombastic to get attention, and to quote Jane from Firefly, says, you can't do something smart, do something right.
Nice. I like that. My favorite Firefly quote is, I'll be in my bunk. I just find
Is that show coming back? I heard that show was coming back.
I have heard some things too, but I don't know for sure. That would be cool. That'd be cool as hell, to be honest with you. All right, guys, we're gonna go right into our 2-hour Should Firefly Come Back stream. Get your popcorn.
Let's do it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That would be awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. Ryan, I see you down there, brother. I apologize we couldn't get you back in here or cycle you back in. But we'll be doing this again very soon. So I just want to say again, thanks to everybody that came, whether you just came into the chat and just had your voice be heard, or you actually joined in here on the screen. This will be open. We're going to be doing this. I'm going to try to do this once a week where we have these kind of conversations. They won't all be about politics or whatever, but they'll be about different things, and we can actually have conversations. I think that's a good benefit. So again, thank you guys.
Trivia night.
That would be awesome.
Let's go.
Yo, that would be great. Yeah, that would be really fun. All right, guys. Well, wait. Real quick before we get out of here, who all in here has YouTube channels? Is it just Trinity?
Yeah, not me.
Just Trinity.
All right. Well, look, Trinity, plug yo shit, dog.
Well, my name is Trinity. You can find me here on YouTube. My channel is the Second Street Marvel, and you can find me on social media everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter @Second Street Marvel. I talk a lot about comic books, movies. I do a morning show every morning called the Morning Movie Chat, where I just flap my gums about movies, and it's fun. People show up, and we talk and we have a lot of fun.
Definitely.
Starts at 8:55 or.
Yeah. Starts right before the morning stream on the Den of Nerds. No.
Yeah, it actually starts right after almost.
Yeah.
And then I also started a live stream talking about music on Sundays. Like we were talking about movies one day, and the next thing you know, we're talking about music. I'm like, you know what? Let's just make this a Sunday show.
Nice.
So music, but yeah, I don't know. I just like to share stuff that I love, and even criticize other things, as well.
Yeah, nice. No, I love Trinity stuff. I'm gonna try to twist his arm into doing some comic book content on the Den of Nerds every Wednesday as well too. So I think that would be pretty fun. But yeah, we'll get out of here, guys. Thank you so much. If you're watching this on the replay, you better have smashed that like button. I'm serious. I'll be very upset if you didn't. And yeah, as I always say, guys, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I will see you in the next video. And then I have to ramble for a little bit because I always cut the stream off.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, everybody say bye.